I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, several top ISIS commanders are reportedly gathered at Israel's doorstep. An Israeli superstar is speaking up for women involved in the Harvey Weinstein scandal. And we'll reveal just how Israel's kibbutz movement is about to get its 15 minutes of fame. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Israeli jets have just struck a Syrian anti-aircraft battery near Damascus. The IDF is saying the Syrian regime struck first, firing rockets at Israeli planes returning from an intelligence mission in Lebanon. Luckily, none of the planes were hit, and Israel returned fire by decimating the anti-aircraft weaponry. The army has confirmed the attack, saying they informed Russia before carrying out the attack, consisting of 4 bomb payloads. Israeli planes have been reported in and around the Syrian airspace for years now, usually to carry out covert operations against either Syria or Hezbollah for its own defense. Last month, it's believed the IAF was behind the attack on a chemical arms plant in Syria that had ties to Hezbollah, though Israel has refused to comment on the matter. A shocking report has just confirmed the presence of several top ISIS commanders right on Israel's doorstep. To make matters worse, it seems the Islamic State has actually set up a training camp in an enclave of the Golan Heights just along the Israeli border with Syria. Israeli media has obtained footage of what appears to be the new ISIS camp, where senior Islamic State commanders can be seen training 300 local youth for combat. The base also serves as an internet propaganda headquarters and a recruitment center. The commanders running the operation are believed to be among ISIS's top brass, most of whom were forced out of Iraq and northern Syria after the recent skirmishes. Last November, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took a harsh stand on preventing any ISIS infringement on Israeli borders after Islamic State fighters had their first reported clash with the IDF along the border with Syria. While there are several terror groups housed along the boundary, Israel has usually avoided direct confrontations beyond its own defensive measures. But with ISIS on its doorstep, many wonder if that policy is about to change. Mere weeks after the Kurdish referendum vote, violence has erupted in northern Iraq, where at least 10 Kurdish fighters have just been reported killed. Israel was one of the few countries to support the Kurdish call for independence, but now it looks like both Iran and Iraq have launched offensive action in the disputed city of Kirkuk. Iran and Iraq rejected the Kurds' referendum vote last September and threatened dire consequences if the vote came to pass. Well, that certainly seems to be what's happening now. After gearing up its army along the city walls, it appears the Iraqi army has now launched a military offensive to retake Kirkuk from the Kurds. Kurdish officials have reported burned houses and many casualties from a multi-pronged Iraqi attack. Helping feed the violence is Iran, who has just cut off its border with the Kurdish region and frozen all money transfers with 4 Kurdish banks. Israel had hoped a Kurdish state would mean a vital ally and land barrier against the common enemy of Iran, but this is a dream now being put to the test, since the violence is only expected to get worse from here. Global terror is on the rise, and many countries are still grappling with how to defend themselves against unseen attacks. Joining us now in the studio is Barry Nussbaum, the founder of the American Truth Project, a nonprofit organization that's taking a close look at America's national security. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
So tell us a little bit about the American Truth Project and what you do.
American Truth Project is a 501c3 in the United States, so it allows donors to come in on a tax-deductible basis. We do two main things. We educate the American public and our viewers around the world on Islamic terror, and we look at that, how it's infiltrated the United States and how it's getting much worse. And on a secondary basis, we look at the security alliance between Israel and America, and we do everything we can to strengthen that. Interesting.
So this is in many senses a fact database in terms of what is happening security-wise within both the United States and the Middle East as a whole.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So, you know, many of the threats that we are talking about, like we said, are relevant here in Israel. And it turns out, like we said, the Islamic State has a base in the Golan Enclave right now. That's just one of many security threats that Israel is dealing with. How do you think countries like America view Israel's response to these types of security threats?
It's changed dramatically over the last several months, mostly in the last year. Islamic terror has come to America, and so now it's not a foreign story in America, it is now a local story. Whether it was in Florida, in Texas, in California, what was an Israeli problem that we as Americans, for the most part, didn't understand, now it's personal. And now we understand what Israel has gone through. And American Truth Project has a lot to do with educating on that exact subject.
Do you think that, you know, people on the ground are understanding that? They're feeling closer to Israel in any sense? Or is that not kind of a shift that we're really witnessing?
That shift is going on right now.
Okay.
Israel has been the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the world, but it was a foreign problem. It was an Israeli problem, or it was an Iraq problem, or it was certainly a European problem. Now it's an American problem, and with the change of administrations, now people understand that it's not workplace violence, it's not gun problems, it's not crazy people, it's Islamic terror, and often with a pledge to ISIS.
Well, speaking about, you know, the change in leadership, what can we expect to see in the future, especially in terms of Israeli-American relations and coordination on these security efforts?
I think there's a profound change that's already happening. It's in the wind in America. You have an American president for the first time in 9 years that is calling the enemy what it is, fundamentalist Islamic terror. And those words were never spoken in Washington, and they were banned by all administration officials. And now the enemy is being named, and once you name the enemy, you can fight the enemy. So as a result, Israel will benefit, ironically, by terror coming to America and, more importantly, a change in the White House.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Baroness Baum.
Thank you.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has just announced a new parliamentary probe which could have massive consequences for NGOs that are critical of Israeli policy. Netanyahu's coalition is unanimously behind the plan, which will track money from foreign governments that fund Israeli NGOs. This probe comes in the wake of Israel's recent crackdown on NGOs, which has drawn controversy from both within the country and abroad. That's because many NGOs targeted by new laws are seen as especially harsh of Israel's occupation of the West Bank and frequently attract global attention. Now Netanyahu is taking things a step further by tracking money from foreign governments that are funding NGOs in Israel. The Prime Minister has announced the new probe will target organizations that operate against IDF soldiers and put a check on foreign meddling in Israeli politics. Critics, on the other hand, say the move is merely another step intended to silence organizations that are speaking out against the state. The probe has the full backing of Netanyahu's coalition, which means it may very well become law in the near future. It looks like the Austrian conservative Sebastian Kurz has just become the world's youngest leader. That's right, the 31-year-old Austrian foreign minister has been elected Chancellor of Austria, demonstrating that the country has lurched strongly to the right. Joining us with some more details is Professor Shlomo Shapira, the director of the European Institute of Bar Ilan University and an expert on European-Israeli relations. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So what does the election of Sebastian Kurz mean for the future of Israeli-Austrian relations?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a signal that Austria is moving too much to the right, although there is another party much more to the right from Kurz
that has gained
much support, over 7%, yes. Israel's main interest in its relations with Austria is the Austrian position in the European Union. And a stronger Austria, perhaps a more firm Austria in terms of European Union relations is good for us as well.
Now, Kurz is expected to form a coalition with the anti-immigration FPOE of Heinz Christian
Strache.
Yes, Strache, a group which has praised Hitler's orderly employment policies, and Strache himself has even flirted with neo-Nazism in his youth, as many of us know. Now, how would you say Austria's Jewish community is feeling about this? I mean, and this is clearly, in many senses, like you said, a lurch to the right, even though, you know, his party isn't necessarily what you would say is representing that.
Unfortunately, the Jews in Austria had to deal with anti-Semitism throughout the existence of the community there. It's a very strong, a very unified Jewish community, and I'm sure that they will make their voices heard. But what we see now really is the Trump effect in Europe. We've seen that in France with the election of a very young, a very charismatic president, who's also relatively young, you know, not as young as Kurds is. And the other thing is, of course, we see parties that haven't done anything in the past come to power. And that's like really ditching all your old boyfriends and finding someone new about whom you know nothing.
Now, you know, I still do want to talk about this global trend towards right-wing nationalism, which is something that does exist and is happening. We're running out of time. My question for you is, why are we seeing a shift like this lately? And can you say that in 30 seconds? I know it's a big issue.
The wave of Islamic immigrants into Europe is the one main cause of the shift towards the right in many countries in Europe. In Hungary, we've seen that in France, we've seen that very recently in Germany, and now in Austria as well. And it's going to continue.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Professor Shlomo Shapira. All right. Israeli superstar Gal Gadot is living up to her legendary role as Wonder Woman and is speaking out against sexual harassment in the movie industry. This as a wave of actresses and models come out against Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein. Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie, Heather Graham, Ashley Judd. These are only some of the household names that are accusing Harvey Weinstein of sexual assault and harassment. And there are dozens more, just like model and actress Zoe Brock.
I met Harvey at a dinner party in Cannes, at the Cannes Film Festival. Around midnight, we wanted to leave. Harvey offered me a ride. And so he and his entourage and I got into one car, and we were all supposed to meet at the same place. But instead, my friends went down to the wharf to get a boat back to the yacht that we were staying on, and I was spirited to the Hotel du Cap, which is a good 30 minutes out of Cannes. Yeah, I was told that our friends would be meeting us there. We went up to the room, and shortly after that, his little entourage started peeling off one by one, and Harvey walked out of the room and came back in naked. He said that he wanted a massage. Could I give him a massage? And I said no. I can't, honestly, I'm a little hazy at that point. I know that I was really taking stock of the situation and assessing escape routes and what was the best option for me. And I really just couldn't tell. I couldn't tell which was safest. I didn't feel safe anywhere. I jumped up and I ran to the bathroom, which was through his bedroom to the left, and locked the door. And he chased me and was pounding on the door and begging me to come out.
So what has Harvey Weinstein's response been to allegations just like this one? Well, it was all, quote, consensual, and that he needs to get help, saying, you know what, we all make mistakes. Well, Israeli actress Gal Gadot doesn't seem to be having it. In an Instagram post, she's written, "Bullying and sexual harassment is unacceptable. I stand by all of the courageous women confronting their fears and speaking out. Together we stand." Harvey Weinstein co-founded Miramax, which produced a number of incredibly popular films, including Pulp Fiction. He has now been expelled from the Academy of Motion Pictures, but it's unclear what the future holds for him, especially if you take a look back at the outcome of multiple allegations that have been made against other Hollywood stars, from Bill Cosby to Roman Polanski. Let's hope. If you make your way up Mount Carmel in northern Israel, you may find yourself at the Yemen Ord Youth Village, a school and safe haven for over 400 at-risk youth from around the world. Well, joining us to tell us about this special place is George Blank, the chairman of the Board of Friends of Yemen Ord. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about how this youth village was founded.
Right. Well, it was founded actually in 1952 to help immigrant children adjust to Israeli society. And it has really dealt with generations of at-risk children. Children who have been abandoned, abused, raped, left behind. Some who came to Israel from wherever they came from, and I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, where are many of these kids coming from?
Well, it varies. It's a question of where the bad spots are for Jewish people. Today, there are a lot of kids coming from France, Ukraine, Soviet Union, Brazil, some Israeli-born kids, and a few other places around the world. But the common denominator is that they've lost hope. All they're doing is surviving.
Now, are these kids here with their family, or are they alone?
Many of them are with family. Some are alone. Some come from distances alone. Many of them broken homes or dysfunctional homes, and they are in big trouble. And so we take them and using a methodology called the Village Way, which was developed about 40 years ago and refined. They are dealt with great kindness, love, therapy, art, sports,
wow,
farming.
So there are many activities for these kids to take. Are they living in the youth village?
Yes, they are. We have about 430 this year in the youth. There are 46 staff members living in youth so that the kids can get almost 24/7 intervention.
This is beautiful. And I understand, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I do want to make sure we get to this. There's a new soccer field that is going to be inaugurated on the premise. Is that correct?
Yes, actually we did it yesterday.
Okay.
And you have some scenes behind you showing that.
Yes.
And
very nice.
Kids, of course, love soccer. And I was born in Poland, and my father and my uncle, before World War II, were great soccer players in our town. And so they were both murdered in the Holocaust, so along with my whole family. So my wife and I were thrilled to invest and yesterday dedicate this beautiful high-tech field to the children of Yemen Ord in the memory of my father and my uncle.
Beautiful. Well, this, I mean, you can already see that they're already using it, right? They're already putting it to use and enjoying it.
I tell you, after the festivities, we left. It was about 8:30 in the evening, and as we drove by, they were playing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they were playing.
Well, we would love to hear more about this youth village. Thank you so much for joining us, George. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I can promise our viewers there will be another story on this very unique
Thank you so
place.
much. Pleasure to be here.
Israel has been on the cutting edge of medical cannabis research for years, but now the country is about to make another major first and offer Jerusalem's first university course in all things marijuana. You heard me right. In Israel, you can officially earn college credit by studying cannabis. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here in the studio with us to discuss.
Yes. Hi, Natasha. That's right. The Hadassah Academic College in Jerusalem will offer the new course starting in December, focusing on every aspect of cannabis, such as agriculture, how to grow it, the business side of the industry, and especially all the medical benefits. I actually sat down a few weeks ago with the CEO of iCannabis and Canatech Sol K for an interview. Canatech is a huge conference held here in Tel Aviv that showcases all the latest breakthroughs in medical cannabis research from all over the world. So a course like this could really foster more entrepreneurs who are eager to get involved in the field by helping them learn more and, you know, who knows, maybe even change the medical world someday.
Absolutely. You know, an American university in Michigan actually just announced a 4-year college degree in cannabis studies. Why do you think we're seeing more and more open cannabis education like this being embraced at the university level?
Well, I think a lot of students and adults are starting to take medical cannabis research much more seriously in general. A lot of people are seeing marijuana less as a drug and more as something that just genuinely aids health. There have been countless clinical trials proving the positive effects. There have been viral videos showcasing it, and it's interesting because parents are actually a lot more open-minded in the past 2 to 3 years about using it to medically treat their kids. So the benefits of teaching about cannabis more openly are really endless.
All right, well, let's take a look at your report.
In just a few months, 80 eager students will make up the first class to enroll in Hadassah Academic College's new medical cannabis course. The course will instruct students on all things green, including how to grow the plant, how to develop it for medical breakthroughs, and how to do it all 100% legally. Israeli scientists have recently made critical medical discoveries in cannabis treatments for cancer, epilepsy, and Alzheimer's, spurring a wave of over 700 entrepreneurs to apply for licenses to legally grow the plant in the country. So although it may sound just a tad weird to tell your parents you're studying weed this semester in college, it might not be so unusual in the coming years, especially here in the Holy Land.
I'll tell you the truth, when you deal with the roads here, sometimes it feels like every driver in Israel is convinced they've been cast in Fast and Furious. Well, it looks like one Israeli may actually be the right fit. That's Alon Day, who has now become the first Israeli race car driver to win NASCAR's European Championship. He's only 26 years old, but Day has already made race car history. There he is, hoisting up the 2017 NASCAR Wellen Euro Series Championship trophy just minutes after crossing the finish line in the series' final race on Sunday. He actually came in fourth place, partly because of his more reserved and cautious approach to the season's final race. Day is known for a more aggressive approach to the road. I wonder where he gets that from, but this time around he said, quote, he didn't want somebody else to get hurt. Day has been racing under the Italian group's CAL Racing for his third consecutive year, but this could open some major new doors for the young racer. His professional career began at only 17 when he won the Asian Formula Renault Series. Day is also known as Israel's first race car driver to join the IDF as an outstanding athlete, which has given him the ability to train abroad and, of course, the chance to become the first ever Israeli driver to compete in the American NASCAR League. 8 years ago, I took part in one of the most life-changing experiences. I went to live and volunteer on a kibbutz in northern Israel. A kibbutz is a type of settlement that's unique to Israel. It's a community that combines socialism and Zionism, meaning that everything is shared from cars to meals and that all members receive the same salary, whether they're doctors or farmers. Still a bit confused? Well, now the BBC wants to make the kibbutz more mainstream by launching a new reality TV show based on the people who choose to volunteer in them. The British network is searching for 10 British Jews of all ages and positions to live and work on some of Israel's over 200 kibbutzes, or kibbutzim in Hebrew. Their entire experiences will be recorded so that viewers can get an inside look at how a kibbutz really works. And it's all in time for Israel's next birthday. That's right, Israel will be celebrating its 70th Independence Day, and BBC is hoping a reality show about the kibbutz movement will help shed light on how the British diaspora feel about modern-day Israel. The show will most likely be filmed on location in the Jezreel Valley or on Megiddo Kibbutz, and should air sometime during 2018. The first kibbutz was established over 90 years ago, and until today, kibbutzim continue to operate under the premise that all income generated by their members goes into a common pool. Now, that pool is used to run the kibbutz, make investments, and guarantee that all of the basic needs of their people, from healthcare to education, are taken care of. All kibbutz members receive the same budget, like I said before, regardless of their position or job, and the kibbutz itself is governed by a system of participatory democracy. Everyone has a say, and now the world will get to hear what visitors have to say as well.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now it's time for our Hebrew word of the day. Many of you have heard of the word kibbutz, which represents one of the first communities in Israel and still exists today throughout the country. What you may not know is that kibbutz is actually the Hebrew word for a collective or a gathering. Well, that makes sense, right? Because a kibbutz is a collective. Still, there are many kinds of kibbutzim, and not just in Israel. There can be a kibbutz of musicians or an artist's kibbutz. And now that I think about it, a dog park is technically just a kibbutz of puppies. But full disclosure here, my favorite kibbutz of all might be the actual kibbutz here in Israel, where I may end up living one day myself, although a kibbutz of puppies would be a close second. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 67 or 19 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect a slight rise in temperatures with a high of 82 or 28 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.5 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.